الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. I want to talk about the rise of neo-Kharji thought in the Muslim world. So I'll try to define what neo-Kharji thought is, in my opinion, and then I will delve into some of the reasons, possible motivations for people to adopt this style of thought and its context, inshallah. And probably we'll try to do this in a series of short sessions, inshallah. So neo-Kharji thought in order to understand what is neo-Kharjism, we need to understand what is Kharji thought. Khawarij were a group, a school of thought among early Muslims which, their trademark was extreme literalism. But obviously, literalism, not every literalist is a Kharji. Literalism was used to justify certain political stance. And Kharji thought and its literalist political ideology. Obviously, not every literalist political ideology is Kharji ideology as well. So, resulted in basically murder of and martyrdom of two Al-Khulafa al-Rashidun, Sayyidina Uthman Zul Nurain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Sayyidina wa Mawlana Ali Karramallahu wajhahu al-Kareem wa radiyallahu anhu wa alayhi salam. And the basis for their they were with Ali Karramallahu wajhahu al-Kareem at start. They were his supporters because they were tapping into general unease and resentment against Usman radiallahu ta'ala in the later half of his khilafah, or later quarter of his Khilafah. And they killed Hazrat Usman and they joined Hazrat Ali, but then they separated from him, and ultimately one of the Kharjis killed Ali Karamallahu Wajhul Kareem. And basically the Khilafah, the rightly guided Khilafah was finished, was ended. Although Imam Hassan alayhi salam wa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was a Khalifa for 6 months, but his Khilafat is part of the Khilafat of Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And when he made an agreement with Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, but with Muawiyah you have a new type of Khilafah, that which is not Khilafah Rashida, in the sense that it is lower than in its status than Al-Khilafat Al-Rashida. And in order to understand the Kharji thought, we need to understand on the grounds they they were separated from Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and they became his opponent. Even though previously they were his supporters. So what changed? And the basic objection to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was that he accepted mediation in order to resolve the issue between differences between Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was on the right side. There's no doubt about that on the whole. Al-haqqu ma aliyin haythu yadur. Sorry, I just lost the train of thought. So the basic objection against Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that he accepted the mediation between himself and Ali, Muawiyah, who is a very close relative of Imam Ali, by the way. And that mediation was that, from Muawiyah's side it would be Amr ibn al-As or his son, not sure. And from Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's side is a great Sahabi, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu ta'ala. And their objection was that he accepted the mediation of human beings. And that's why they did his takfir, I guess, and they raised their well-known slogan, Inil hukmu illa lillah. The sovereignty belongs only to Allah. Obviously, that's totally true. And that's a part of the verse of Quran, so nobody can deny that the sovereignty belongs to only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they said the mediation should only be the Quran. And they said the only sovereign is the Quran, because it's the word of Quran, word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only sovereign. And in response to that, Ali karamallahu wajhahul kareem said his historic word, kalimatul haqqi, urida bihal. What they're saying is the right. What they're saying is correct. That sovereignty belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what they intend by this is falsehood, is incorrect. So you can have a right slogan, but you use it to, for whatever reason, use it to. You can be totally sincere. We have no reason to believe, we have no reason to doubt that Kharjis, or early Kharjis who were opposing Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu were insincere. So there's a correct slogan, there's a correct proposition, but you're understanding it or using in a way which is supporting not a correct stance, but an incorrect stance, a falsehood. So what they're saying is correct, but what they are understanding from it is incorrect. And it's said that Imam Ali karamallahu wajhahul kareem, he asked for the largest Quran, or copy of Quran to be brought to him, and then he said to these people, now ask the Quran to govern and to mediate, and etc. And what Imam Ali was saying through this example was that, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sovereign. His word, the Quran, is sovereign. It's the Quran which should rule, not the ruler. But the Quran doesn't rule on its own. You need people, you need human beings to implement that sovereignty. And you need institutions of, for example, of Al-Khilafat al-Rashida, to implement the sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sovereignty doesn't work on its own. His sovereignty in Shari sense. That's his design. So that's their basic misconception. Not able to distinguish between the sovereign and sovereignty and the tools and instruments which are needed to implement that sovereignty. For example, human government, state, etc. So that was their basic misconception, basic sleight of hand. Now this old Kharji thought, a few characteristics. So this thought is extremely literalist. But obviously, as I said, literalism can lead to many different stances and worldviews. It doesn't have to end up in Kharjism. But they were literalist. The second important thing is they are idealists. That's why they can't differentiate between the word and reality, ideal and reality. So idealist is the one who think that there won't be any distance between the ideal and the reality. The ideals would be implemented 100%. A realist, on the other hand, is the one who doesn't care about ideals. Just want to make sure that things on the ground are implemented. So realism and idealism go hand in hand. On the other hand, revolutionary, for example, is the one who doesn't take her eyes off ideals, but also realizes that ideals will always be implemented imperfectly. There can't be any perfection in this world. That's why we have paradise. We are not here to create paradise. We can't create a paradise. We just try our best to implement the ideals we have in reality, but there will always be a distance between reality and ideals. And the main thing is we are always trying to get close to the ideals. But ideals are, by definition, can never be reality. They are there to guide your actions in implementing a plan, for example. So that's the second thing. But obviously, in order to be idealist, you don't have to be Kharji. Idealism can lead to many different views, but this is part of their views. So first is they are literalists, second is they are idealists, and the third, which actually distinguishes them from all others, they are anarchists. They are anarchists in the sense that they think that institutions and humans shouldn't rule. What should rule is the ideals. But obviously this will lead to anarchy because ideals can't rule on their own. They rule through humans and they rule through institutions. So Kharjism is anarchism, and that anarchism is manifested in idealism and in rejection of institutions. In this case, the rejection of Al-Khilafat al-Rashida, the institution of Khilafat al-Rashida, the rightly guided government and state. So I think these are three main characteristics of the old Kharji thought. But when we go to Neo-Kharjism, we have all these three things there: literalism, at least idealism, and anarchism. But Neo-Kharjis obviously are not necessarily like old Kharji. The old Kharjis were activists, jihadis. But you don't have to be activist Kharji to be Kharji. Extreme activists they were actually. But their activism was all geared towards destroying institutions because, as anarchists, they didn't want any institutions, basically. So that's why they were a destructive force. But today's Neo-Kharjism actually manifests in non-action, extreme passivity, for whatever reason. Because that extreme passivity might be because people find themselves helpless, and activism is, or jihad, for example, comes with high price, personal. Or you can be pacifist because you are basically the agent of the currently ruling system. So you don't want anything to do with any struggle to overcome and overthrow those systems. So you content yourself, or you make up arguments for yourself and for others, so that you don't have to involve in activism. And so Neo-Kharjism is actually in manifestation exactly the opposite of the old Kharjism, but that doesn't mean that that is not Kharjism, because the basic characteristics are the same, and their basic loyalty to anarchism and their basic distaste of institution is the same, but it works differently. And obviously Kharjism always serves anti-Islamic forces, intentionally or unintentionally, because once Khilafat al-Rashida was deconstructed, then obviously it was a great gift to the forces of evil and non-Islamic. Similarly, if you discredit today the struggle to overcome imperialism and their allies in the Muslim world, then that's a great news for America and its allies, and to the ruling capitalist system. So, but today in this session we basically covered the old Kharji thought, but inshallah in the next one we'll try to be a bit more specific about the Neo-Kharji thought. Okay.